Together, they determined the flavor of the American century. They mixed American abundance with a smattering of science, a big helping of technology, and a pinch of old-fashioned shrewdness. And they utterly reinvented eating. A fur trader who would dine on practically anything, who noticed that meat frozen at near Arctic temperatures tasted great. A gourmet chef who believed in canned food and who changed his name to stop people from mispronouncing it. And a devoted nutritionist who didn't think too highly of modern cooking and who believed that most diseases could be traced to the kitchen. These are the stories of the Americans who put the food on your table. An extraordinary gang of inventors and innovators, experimenters, gamblers, and visionaries who seized their moment and rewrote the American recipe book. The creators of American Eats. Creamy, dreamy, decadent, divine.
Manufacturing chocolates like we do, I've always felt that we make people happy.
Medicine, tranquilizer, aphrodisiac. Just a few of the roles chocolate has taken on for the men and women who have craved it across the ages.
Precious stuff like champagne is among ourselves. It was expensive, and it was very, very sophisticated.
But chocolate has made an extraordinary journey since its days as a treat for the elite, all the way from the powdered wig set to the average Joe, courtesy of an American named Hershey. Here's an unsurprising statistic. 90% of Americans indulge in some form of chocolate every single day. And yet, in many ways, chocolate is an enigma.
Well, there are two mysteries about chocolate. One is, the first, how did they ever invent it in the first place? The second one is, what's in the stuff? There's all sorts of stuff written about that this is an aphrodisiac, that it's a narcotic, that it's all these other things, that you can get high on chocolate.
What we do know is that chocolate was born in what we now call the Americas. Around 3,000 years ago in what is now Mexico, the Olmec people unlocked the secrets of a tree they called the cacao. Although raw cacao seeds have no chocolate taste at all, the Olmecs figured out that if they split the seed pods, fermented them, dried them, and then ground them, the final product would have a unique and unforgettable flavor.
Now, how they got the idea to do this is one of the great mysteries of all times. I really don't know.
Chocolate spread throughout the cultures of the region. By 500 AD, the Mayans of the Yucatan were such chocoholics that they were making special pottery for chocolate and chocolate only.
This is the hieroglyph for chocolate right here. On all these chocolate vases, it reads phonetically cacao, which is cacao or chocolate.
Chocolate was put in a vase because it was actually a drink. Ancient Americans mixed ground chocolate with water, and it was often served spicy instead of sweet, flavored with chili peppers. And it was so precious that only kings and nobles were allowed to drink it.
It's labor-intensive, but it also carried a heavy load of symbolism. It was a holy drink. It was a drink of the gods. Everybody who worked for the Aztec emperor could be paid in cacao, these chocolate beans. The old adage that money grows on trees is literally true for these people.
Among the Mayans in the 1500s, 10 cocoa beans could buy a rabbit, or you might negotiate the services of a prostitute for 8 or 10 beans. The earliest recorded link between chocolate and sex. Spanish invader Hernan Cortez may also have seen a connection between chocolate and passion. Aztec Emperor Montezuma gave Cortez his first chocolate in 1519, and according to Spanish histories, Montezuma drank 50 cups a day for prurient purposes. No wonder chocolate made the reverse commute back to Spain in the mid-1500s, where it began to conquer Europe.
People considered it to have medical value. So it had to fit into old world ideas about what was good for you and what was bad for you. And they decided that for certain things it was really very, very good for you. It became and stayed an elite drink in Europe.
Investors began to grow chocolate beans in European colonies in Mexico and Brazil and ship them back to Europe by the ton. Drinking chocolate became a habit among the European upper crust. Marie Antoinette had a cup of chocolate each morning. In its heyday, chocolate was more popular than coffee or tea. In the 1600s, English merchants added chocolate to the menu in England's coffee houses. The English loved the new flavor, and the chocolate business boomed. But chocolate was still expensive. Unscrupulous confectioners did offer cheaper chocolate, but they were soon found to be lowering prices by mixing potato starch, veal fat, or even ground brick dust into their product. Clearly, it was going to take a revolution to bring chocolate to the masses. An American revolution.
The European philosophy about chocolate is quite different from the American philosophy. From the point of view of flavor, from the point of view of quality, and the point of view of pricing. The Americans make chocolate affordable.
Dr. James Baker opened the first American chocolate factory in Massachusetts in 1765. In 1852, immigrant Domingo Girardelli opened his factory in San Francisco. And a few years after that, the boy was born who would change chocolate forever.
When Milton Hershey was a child, and he was born in 1857, the only chocolate that would have been available to him would have been kind of coarse, sweet chocolate, not very, would have been really gritty in your mouth. It would have been very inexpensive. It would have been sold in large slabs, and then individual shopkeepers would have broken off pieces.
When Milton Hershey was 2 years old, a British chocolate maker figured out how to separate cocoa powder from cocoa butter and then recombine them into a chewable bar. In short order, Swiss chocolate makers hit on the method for mixing chocolate and evaporated milk and invented the technique known as conching, crushing and recrushing the chocolate till it was silky smooth. In 1893, Milton Hershey was 36 years old and already running a successful caramel-making business in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That year, he came face-to-face with a new chocolate bar-making technology at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago.
He's fascinated by chocolate, so he buys the equipment at the end of the exposition and brings it back to Lancaster.
In 1900, Hershey sold his caramel business. That same year, he came out with the first Hershey's milk chocolate bar. In Hershey's factory, the elite sweet had at last felt the democratizing touch of American industry.
This whole caramel business was based on selling a lot of a product at a small profit margin. So you have to sell a lot of it.
He's often been called the Henry Ford of the chocolate industry. He had his own huge herds of cows to produce milk. He had his own sugar plantations in Cuba.
Milton Hershey introduces the idea of selling it at newsstands, selling it in grocery stores and soda fountains. He also creates the nickel bar. The nickel bar is introduced with the milk chocolate bar in 1900.
In 1901, Hershey sold more than $600,000 worth of chocolate nickel by nickel. By 1903, he was breaking ground for the house the chocolate built, an immense new factory complex in central Pennsylvania. When prices of milk or cocoa dropped, he made the nickel bar bigger. When prices rose, the bar shrank. The legend has it that he got the inspiration for his next breakthrough from the puckering sound his machines made as they cranked out bite-sized chocolate morsels. The truth is a lot less colorful.
The word kiss itself is actually a very common confectionery term. And so Milton Hershey had the great foresight to trademark that word.
It wasn't long before Hershey and chocolate became synonymous. When you went for a chocolate bar, you reached for this Hershey bar, and the Hershey bar was everywhere, as Hershey's Kisses were everywhere. You couldn't avoid it.
Hershey's success reinvented American candy. A cloak of affordable chocolate began to drape every possible candy bar. The Baby Ruth bar in 1917, the O. Henry bar in 1920. But in spite of the skilled imitators, when war approached, Uncle Sam went straight to the father of modern chocolate, Hershey. In 1937, the Army asked Hershey to help improve the D ration, a chocolate-based high-energy food for soldiers. Hershey's factory started producing the D ration beginning in 1942, and GIs gobbled them for the rest of the war.
Got easy.
For the next 3 decades, Hershey's heirs fought inflation and rising prices to keep his landmark nickel bar on the shelves. But on November 24th, 1969, after shrinking to 3/4 of an ounce, the Hershey nickel bar ceased to exist. Hershey is still the biggest name in American chocolate. Milton's factory complex in Hershey, Pennsylvania thrives today. Within sight of the plant, Americans by the thousands express their special love for chocolate. Today, chocolate is as affordable and ubiquitous as bread or milk. Every holiday or special event is its own excuse for indulging in chocolate.
It's not that expensive an item. Most people can afford the cost of a package of chocolates or chocolate novelties. Certainly at Christmas, it's not the same unless you have a Santa. Likewise, the other holidays, Thanksgiving without a chocolate turkey is not Thanksgiving.
So, if we can have all the chocolate we want, is there any connection between chocolate and you know what?
There are all kinds of claims to chocolate. An aphrodisiac, I can't get enough chocolate. but I don't know what it is, but there is something special about chocolate. People love chocolate. They are chocoholics.
I think you'd have to talk to a chemist to find out why the human body loves chocolate so much. But it's apparent that chocolate is probably everyone's favorite flavor.
Chocolate probably has more than 200 chemical substances in it, which is why it's never been, ever, synthesized by anybody, thank God. It's an incredible mystery, the whole thing, from beginning to end.
Coming up, how a gourmet chef climbed into a can and conquered America.
He was just as sweet as that photograph that you see on this can here.
When More American Eats returns, here on the History Channel.
Hello, Westside Cable. I'm here for the install. I'm at your front door, sir.
I'll tell you what, we'll meet you back there sometime between 12 and 5. Always wanted to say that.
The more powerful Acura RL.
Introducing the best America Online ever. New version 7.0. It's better, faster, and easier.
It's like a click and you're connected.
7.0 is fast.
It's got all the new features. It's just so easy.
All new AOL version 7.0.
Welcome.
It's everything you love about America Online. You've got mail. Now with cool new features and places to go.
I'm falling in love with the new features. 7.0 is the best. Don't be a chicken, it's easy.
America Online, new version 7.0. So easy to use, no wonder it's #1. Call 1-800-4ONLINE.
That snowball is a great way to tell customers Staples has technology gifts.
Greetings, handhelds make terrific gifts. So do digital cameras.
Nice price.
Excuse me, could you tell me about the scanner fax copier?
No,
But I want to get it for my brother.
get him a cell phone.
No, he really wants one of these.
He can't have her. I love her.
What?
No. Weeping.
It's okay. You found just someone else.
Oh.
Get more for less at Staples.
Dentist will be right with you.
Thank you.
Now you can go from drilling holes to driving screws in a snap. Get the Quick Connect bit change system, only on the new Firestorm drill. Unlike other drills,
Okay, are you ready?
it's totally painless.
Oh, sorry.
The new Firestorm, built by Black & Decker.
You've come to the right place. You can feel the spirit. And it's good to get together and enjoy some awesome steak. So don't just go out. Go out back. Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
You can slow down investing. You can stop investing entirely. But you can't stop daughters from falling in love.
Hi, Daddy.
Which is why your Morgan Stanley financial advisor will never let you lose sight of what you're investing for.
This week in history, from the Civil War to Vietnam to Afghanistan.
Mike Taibbi, NBC News, Bora Bora, Afghanistan.
See the danger and the politics of journalists on the battlefield. You know history's headlines. Now find out more this week in history. Monday night at 8 on the History Channel. Experience the drama as never seen before.
Our dash towards the unseen shore became a nightmare of sickness, pain, and fear.
Combat cameramen risk their lives to capture these rare images, bringing personal battle experiences to a new, powerful level.
There are thousands of things that go through your mind when you believe you are going to die.
The Color of War. Tomorrow night at 8 on the History Channel.
We now return to More American Eats here on the History Channel. Which Italian American has contributed more to American culture? Frank Sinatra? Joe DiMaggio? How about this guy? Chef Boyardee. Not only was he a real person, he was one of the best Italian chefs of his time. And when he embraced the tin can, he became the numero uno envoy of Italian food to America.
He was the sweetest gentleman you would ever want to meet in your life. He was just as sweet as that photograph that you see on this can here.
Once upon a time, his name was Hector Boiardi, and he came looking for a new life in America. Just one of the 4 million Italian immigrants who flooded into the eastern U.S. around the turn of the century. They settled in eastern cities alongside other immigrants, building ethnic neighborhoods thick with the smells and flavors of the old country. Germans brought hamburgers and hot dogs. Chinese cooks invented Americanized stir-fries like chop suey.
One of the curious dilemmas that Americans and American immigrants face is maintaining a sense of their own dignity as ex-Chinese, Persian, whatever, and also being American. So in that sense, food is an extraordinarily powerful method for uniting the past and your present and future in America.
So Italians raised tomatoes in city window boxes or grew basil in flower pots and olives in their backyards. These were the simple rustic flavors of southern Italy. But the recipes changed in the New World.
When all of the immigrants came to America, the myth of their looking for streets paved with gold was a complete illusion. They were never looking for that in the first place. They were looking for enough to sustain them to eat, because they were starving back in the old country. When they got to the United States, not only did they find streets full of markets, but they found stalls full of vegetables and fruits and meat, so that you could have meat, instead of once every 3 months, you could have meat twice a week, 3 times a week. The idea of having a roast chicken, and everything was bigger. Pizzas got bigger, platters of pasta got bigger, because there was this abundance, and to eat well is to be well.
Italians opened restaurants famous for their generous portions. Still, even into the 1920s, the taste for Italian food was limited to eastern seaboard cities. But that was before Hector. Hector Boiardi came from a large family in northern Italy, near Milan. He arrived in New York in 1913 with his brother Paul. Paul got a job as a maitre d' at the city's famed Plaza Hotel, and soon Hector was working in the Plaza's kitchens. From there, Hector graduated to the genteel Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia, where in 1915 he answered cooking's highest call.
Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, had his wedding reception there. Uncle Hector catered that wedding reception at 18 years old. And he told me the reason for that was because there were 1,500 people in the party. And he said, we can't handle it. He told them, look, you let me handle it, I'll show you how to do it.
From West Virginia, Boiardi moved on to take a hotel chef job in Cleveland. But in 1924, he quit to open his own restaurant at last. Although he was from the north of Italy, Hector served the southern Italian foods that were popular in New York and Boston. And pasta and tomatoes were just as appealing to mid-American taste buds as they were in New York. His restaurant was a quick success.
So every once in a while, somebody would say, Hector, can I take a little sauce home with me? You know what I mean? I can't get here tomorrow night, or I'm going to have a little company. Do you mind? Well, he said, okay. Well, then eventually they kept on doing it. They came back, and they said, well, you know, Hector, you know, it's not the same as at the restaurant. What's the problem? Well, he says, you're using the wrong pasta. You got to use the pasta with the semolina flour. Okay. And then they come back again. You know, Hector still wasn't right.
By 1927, Boiardi was sending his favorite customers home with the whole works. A jar of a signature sauce, a bag of real pasta, and a packet of the proper cheese. The first packaged spaghetti dinner. A dinner tasty enough that a friend of Boiardi smelled profits. He proposed a simple business plan to distribute it around Ohio.
What we'll do is simple. He says, I'll get some truckers together. You know, you cook for them, so they package. And they went to these truckers. The truckers enjoyed the food, of course, as our director cooked for them. And one trucker says, I could sell 12 cases. You know, at that time, there's local grocery stores and everything. I could sell 15 cases. I could sell 20. And that was the beginning. And it just took off.
Chef Boiardi was smart enough to realize that Italian food, which previously had been a very ethnic food that you really only had in big cities where there are immigrant families and there were pizzerias and little Italian restaurants, but you didn't find that across the United States. And one of the main reasons was that it was not available.
It was about to be. Back in New York, Hector's brother Paul served Hector's spaghetti dinner to a Plaza Hotel patron named John Hartford, who just happened to own the nationwide chain of A&P supermarkets. Hartford was impressed, and Hector was about to go national in a can. Cans weren't exactly new. The French had invented canning around 1800 to feed Napoleon's army. The British started making round metal cans in 1810. But the process was slow and expensive. The first cans were cut and soldered by hand. Often they were so thick they could only be opened with a hammer and chisel. It was American industry that created cheap modern canning, spurred on first by the tremendous supply needs of the westward covered wagon migrations and then the Civil War. By the 1870s, an American factory could crank out 20,000 sterile cans of food a day. Boiardi wasn't the first to can spaghetti either. During the First World War, when Italy was one of our allies, the American Army had fed canned spaghetti to the troops. But when Boiardi hooked up with A&P, the timing was perfect. First of all, a convenient, easy-to-use can opener had just come on the market. The butterfly wheel, patented in 1936 and still a standard design today. More importantly, shoppers had come to trust canned soup and vegetables as labor-saving and nutritious.
In my house, when my father's comment about, say, green beans was not when were these picked or which farm stand did you get them, he said, what brand are these? And my father was a grocer, and my mother, since my father often brought the cans that had lost their labels from the grocery store home, my mother often didn't know the answer. I mean, she hadn't even known they were green beans, right? When she opened it up, it could have been rutabaga for all she knew.
Boiardi seized his moment. He was going to offer the bulk of Americans an exotic canned food they had never tried before.
This could be packaged and poured out of a can, heated up, and poured into a plate, whether you were in Petoskey, Michigan, or Idaho, or any place else. So this was the first time that Italian food, per se, became very popular throughout the United States because of Chef Boiardi's invention.
That was the beginning of pasta. He was the beginning. There was no question about it.
In 1937, Boiardi found an empty silk factory in central Pennsylvania and secured a promise from local farmers to stop growing corn and raise 1,000 acres of tomatoes instead.
This area here is where they process the tomatoes. And when I was a kid, I used to come here with a salt shaker. And I don't know how many tomatoes I thought I could eat.
Hector roamed his immense new kingdom, controlling every detail of the cooking, even raising his own mushrooms on trays in the factory basement.
The only food that he ever made at the plant was the food that he served at home for his family. He never changed anything.
Except one thing. He changed the name on the label.
He was a very proud individual. And he loved his family very much, and he was very proud of his name. And he wanted to make sure that when he writes that everyone would pronounce it properly. So when he, on the can, he put it B-O-Y-A-R-D-E-E.
Hector Boiardi's career peaked with the Second World War when he won a huge contract to make C and K rations for Allied troops. In 1943, Chef Boiardi became the second company awarded the coveted Army and Navy E Awards for excellence. 3 years later, the chef sold out and turned his factory over to a large food conglomerate. There were still many Italian discoveries yet to come to the American palate. Risotto, carpaccio, cream sauces, and the whole menu of northern Italy. But the ground had been laid by the grinning gourmet on the side of the can. And his name, with a few minor alterations, has been pronounced perfectly for 70 years. Coming up, perfected by the poorest in a wealthy land, the slowest food in a fast food nation, barbecue. When More American Eats returns here on the History Channel.
Explore our national icons with the History Channel's American Classics. Use your MasterCard card and purchase the video set and classic radio for $55.96, 20% off the regular price. To order, call or log on to HistoryChannel.com. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard.
Catcher's mitt for son, $47. Catcher's mitt that comes with Space Camp for son, priceless. Use your MasterCard to win 5 priceless gifts, including a trip to Space Camp.
Hello, Westside Cable. I'm here for the install. I'm at your front door, sir.
I'll tell you what, we'll meet you back there sometime between 12 and 5. Always wanted to say that.
The more powerful Acura RL.
It wasn't only a career change, it was a change in our lifestyle.
I'm really proud of her. She's really cool.
She brings a different point of view. I think she'll get ahead very fast.
Thanks to my education, my family and I feel much more secure.
ITT Technical Institute, education for the future. To find out more, call 1-800-338-4715. That's 1-800-338-4715.
Tomorrow morning on History Center. Who's more to blame for the escalating violence in Israel, Yasser Arafat or Ariel Sharon?
We have to really place the blame here, though, on Arafat and the Palestinian Authority.
The Palestinian state is not only under siege, but it's under attack.
In fact, what Arthur says is flat out wrong.
There's only two possibilities to explain Arafat. He's either complicit or he's powerless.
He's the great survivor.
We're not going to have any solution there.
The debate continues on History Center. Tomorrow morning at 10 on the History Channel.
At Laurel Jaguar, we'll pick up your car and give you a complimentary Jaguar loaner at home. And return it to you at your convenience, even at work.
You don't have to be MVP to be treated like one at Laurel Jaguar.
Visit Laurel Jaguar today and experience the all-new all-wheel drive X-Type. Luxury has never been more affordable. Laurel Jaguar, Route 198, Laurel.
Cheese. Some say it's the heart and soul of a perfect pizza. That's why Papa John's uses 100% real cheese. It costs us a little more, us, not you, but the taste is definitely worth it. That's one reason why Papa John's is now the fastest growing pizza company in America. Call and we'll deliver all the delicious reasons right to your door. Better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's.
Get a free Blockbuster Favorites movie rental coupon when you purchase a large one-topping pizza and a 2-liter Coke for just $9.99. Offer expires December 30th, 2001.
We now return to More American Eats. If you think American food is fast food, here's something to chew on. The original American way of cooking is slow as it goes. Barbecue.
So tender it falls off the bone. Nice, beautiful smoke flavor.
It's awesome. It's awesome. You get all the meat, you leave just the bone.
Most famous American foods have mass production to thank for their success. Not barbecue. It's still cooked and savored one bite at a time. And it's not just a food. It's an art form, invented and perfected by America's poorest citizens. The biography of barbecue is a story about all of America.
Oh, that's delicious. Can't you smell it? Can't you hear what it's saying? Come get me. I'm all yours.
The cooking of meats over open fire surely had to be the first thing that human beings ever discovered about cooking food. We know from historical archaeological findings that they were roasting meats 25,000 years ago.
In what we now call the Caribbean, the Taino Indians developed a technique of smoking and grilling fish on a wooden frame. In 1492, a few boatloads of Spanish explorers suddenly showed up for dinner.
The Indians would put this framework over some slow coals, and they'd put the fish or fowl or whatever they had shot that day in hunting, and maybe with some banana leaves to catch the smoke, and they'd let it smoke for hours and hours and hours. It was very different to the Europeans who had never seen cooking of this style.
The Taino called their grilling frame barbacoa or barbacoa. The Spanish changed the word to barbacoa. By the 1600s, barbecue had moved north along the trade routes to Virginia and North Carolina, with help from the locals, since Indians in those territories also smoked their meat on frames. The first meat of choice in the colonies was pork, since pigs were heavy with meat and cheap to raise. Barbecuing cooked the hog all at once, so there was nothing left to spoil. And it was roasted at low temperatures so that the pig was cooked all the way through without burning. Aromatic hardwood on the fire saturated the meat with smoke, turning even the toughest parts of the animal into a tender, flavorful meal. By the 18th century, the barbecue was an American ritual from Boston to Atlanta. The meat of an entire pig could feed a whole lot of folks, so a barbecue became the obligatory meal for American social gatherings, especially in the South.
So you dig a hole in the ground, or you dig some other kind of apparatus in the ground, and you start cooking outdoors. And you can feed a lot of folks that way.
In 1769, George Washington recorded in his diary, "Went into Alexandria to a barbecue and stayed all night." The food must have been particularly good because he stayed for 3 nights. When the American Revolution ended in 1781, the British surrender was celebrated with barbecues.
It was part of every American celebration from the earliest days. In Washington, D.C., when they laid the cornerstone of the Capitol, they had a barbecue. So barbecue was sort of all over America.
In fact, as a social event, the barbecue was the original way to influence voters. Buy a few barrels of whiskey and do a lot of barbecue.
Barbecue was not an exclusively Southern ritual, but it thrived in the South as nowhere else. And one of the reasons was slavery.
It takes a lot of physical effort to move the meat around, to dig the big pits that the meat was cooked in. And because it wasn't done by the white slaveholders, it was done by the slaves, so it was pretty much exclusively done by black men.
The Civil War ended slavery in 1865, but barbecue remained a family tradition for many American blacks, a kind of culinary magic trick by which the poorest Americans used patience and skill to turn low-quality meat like ribs or brisket into a delicacy. Recipes, cooking times, and other details were handed down from father to son, usually.
When I was a kid, my mother actually taught me how to barbecue. A lot of good barbecues are down with the recipe. They won't let anybody know.
Different regions developed distinct styles. Texans barbecued mostly beef, and they flavored it with a spicy tomato-based sauce. In North Carolina, barbecue is pork. The sauce can be a vinegar and spice mixture, or sometimes it isn't sauce at all, just a salt and pepper rub. But no matter who's cooking the barbecue or how, theirs is always the best.
You'll have people in North Carolina or Memphis swear to their meat, okay? I've been there. I've tried it. I like it. But you can't compare it to Texas barbecue.
You got to understand, barbecuing is an art. And if I tell folk all the time, as they're cooking in our cooking process, if you're not going to be an artist, I'd rather you be gone. Get out of here, because this is not the place for you.
Obviously, claiming a single home for American barbecue is impossible. And yet, every kind of commerce has a capital. And the headquarters of professional barbecue became Kansas City, Missouri. KC's large slaughterhouses meant cheap meat. There were lots of working-class folks cooking it. And to top it all off, Kansas City had Henry Perry. In 1907, Perry opened a barbecue stand in downtown Kansas City. Like most barbecuers in his town, Perry was black. Perry's customers were black too, since Kansas City was a segregated town. But at his restaurant, something curious began to happen.
He made mention of the fact that he was serving a mixed audience, and that people would pull up to the front of his restaurant in chauffeur German limousines, and they'd rub elbows with poor black laborers who could barely put 2 dimes together.
When Henry Perry died in 1940, the business ended up in the hands of one of his assistants, Arthur Bryant. Throughout the 40s and 50s, Bryant carried on Perry's tradition, desegregation through deliciousness.
Arthur Bryant told me once that mixed groups of soldiers would be sent by the USO to his place. And I tried to imagine this black guy and white guy coming together to Kansas City from Fort Riley after basic, and they're pals, they're going to stick together. And then they get farther and farther toward Bryan's, and the neighborhood's looking less and less good, and they get to this sort of dumpy-looking place with this great dusty jugs of barbecue sauce in the window, and the white guy's wondering, well, maybe the color of a man's skin does make a difference. No, he's going to stick with his guy, he's his buddy, and he walks in and he's in the best restaurant in the world. The virtue has been rewarded for maybe the first time in the entire Republic's history.
And then the 1950s. You might think that's when barbecue finally hit the big time. Dads by the thousands heading into the backyard to fire up the charcoal. Well, technically, that's not barbecuing, which is slow and low. Cooking directly over high heat for a short time is really something called grilling.
I call them backyard chefs. That's great. I think you need more of them.
When you say you're having a barbecue, you know, if you're using a grill and you've got some slow coals and you want to put hamburgers and hot dogs on it, well, you know, that's your problem. But, you know, that's not barbecue in Texas. But, you know, if that's barbecue in the rest of the country, well, you know, we can't all be Texans.
In the 1960s, Texas-style barbecue came back into fashion. There was a barbecue-loving Texan in the White House. No, not that Texan, this Texan. And Lyndon Johnson's favorite kind of big shindig was the kind that had been winning hearts and votes for 300 years. It was in 1977 that barbecue claimed the ultimate crown. In the elite pages of the New Yorker magazine, author Calvin Trillin called Arthur Bryant's the best damned restaurant in the world. As a native of Kansas City, Trillin was hopelessly biased toward his hometown hangout, with its famous burnt ends carved off the edge of the brisket.
They were very crisp and hard and burnt and ends. They were burnt ends is what they were. God, I still think of them. Make any man weep, I would say.
That kind of ferocious loyalty is part of the fun of barbecue. Whether it's about cooking secrets, the seasoning, or the sauce.
That's the best sauce in town. Because it's by Arthur Bryant. The original.
My barbecue sauce is about as original as you can get. The only difference is I put a part of me in mine.
Today, Americans spend close to $500 million on barbecue sauce every year to make their backyard cookouts taste more like the real thing. For the true barbecue fanatics, there's the competition circuit.
And don't you think you're dying going to heaven?
There are dozens of barbecue contests every year, 20 of them in Kansas City alone. There, the diehards gather to drink, talk, and cook, dreaming that the next morning the judges will pick theirs as the best.
Like a ball player hitting that home run, or a basketball player hitting that three-pointer. And see that bone swing? That's my three-pointer.
In 1949, when I went to college, I've said to everybody that would listen, I will never be in the barbecue business when I get back here. I'm in the barbecue business. So I lied.
Coming up, how seal meat and caribou steaks inspired one man to change American life forever.
He would freeze steaks and then, invite people over for dinner, and he would, throw it on the ground and they would bounce.
When More American Eats returns, here on the History Channel.
This holiday, there's only one place to unwrap the magic. JCPenney.
There's magic
magic moment.
These shimmering half-carat diamond heart pendants, now only $1.99 each.
It's all inside.
JCPenney.
Do you like legs? Good, because right now at Red Lobster, a pound of hot, steaming snow crab legs is just $10.99. So walk, run, or crawl to Red Lobster and go overboard.
The 260 horsepower Acura CL Type S.
Buried evidence of ancient civilizations, proof that the Old Testament stories are true or not.
You cannot judge the Bible on its Old Testament.
As archaeologists unearth clues, the roots of a more modern conflict are revealed.
A holy war surrounding history's most sacred monument.
Could the solution to the turmoil in the Middle East lie deep within the very ground they fight over?
If you want to understand the dispute between Israelis and Palestinians, you have to understand what's happening in archaeology.
Digging for the Truth, a world premiere, Monday night at 9 on the History Channel. Tomorrow night on the History Channel, they were weapons of mass production. They were a marvelous piece of engineering. Brilliant in their design, simple in their operation, devastating in impact. The History Channel celebrates and investigates these wartime workhorses on battle stations. Tomorrow night at 9 on the History Channel.
They're the people you thought you knew, and the people you want to know more about. The all-new Biography Channel. Step out of your life and into the lives of movie stars and moguls. From their most dramatic on-screen performances to the untold drama of their lives.
Every night, we could live another life.
Movies, biographies, and documentaries, 24 hours a day. The Biography Channel. Call your cable operator or satellite provider.
I think we were fortunate to have FDR in the White House at the time, and he spoke for all America when he said, "This is the day that shall live in infamy," and it galvanized the nation.
New America Online version 7.0 is here.
There's never been a better time to join.
Call now for our best offer ever.
7.0 is filled with a whole bunch of new stuff.
Bing! You got your instant messages.
Fun getting email.
You've got mail. Call now, sign up over the phone, and be online in minutes.
Customer service is great.
7.0 makes it even easier.
Call 1-877-265-0200 now to join AOL and get a risk-free special offer for new members.
What are you waiting for?
America Online. So easy to use, no wonder it's #1.
We now return to More American Eats. It's a rock-hard, frost-scarred brick. It's also a miracle of technology and inspiration. And whether you know it or not, frozen food changed your life. And maybe your mother's, too. The possibilities to be found in freezing food have always fascinated those with a little extra vision. In 1626, the pioneering English scientist Francis Bacon tried stuffing chickens with snow to keep them fresh. It might have been a breakthrough, but Bacon caught a chill and died. A couple of centuries later, an eccentric Oxford professor served his guests mammoth steaks, which had been defrosted from a beast frozen in Siberia for 12,000 years. As far as we know, none of his guests got sick. Finally, in 1916, frozen food made real progress thanks to a part-time trapper, explorer, taxidermist, naturalist, cook, and inventor named Clarence Birdseye. Birdseye was 26 years old when he traveled to northern Canada to trap foxes for their fur. In Labrador, he realized that seal meat, caribou steaks, and especially fish frozen in the sub-zero cold tasted fresh when they were thawed and cooked weeks or even months later. Birdseye had discovered flash freezing. The key was the deep Arctic cold. Commercial freezing at the turn of the century couldn't get down to super cold temperatures. Foods frozen slowly developed large ice crystals, which ruined the texture and taste. Even New York State decided that frozen food was too nasty to serve to prison inmates in Sing Sing. When the U.S. entered the First World War, Birdseye moved his family back to New York and continued his experiments, packing food into candy boxes and immersing it in barrels of salt water.
He would freeze steaks and then, invite people over for dinner, and he would, throw them on the ground and they would bounce, because I guess the cold storage that they had at the time wouldn't really freeze things that hard, so that was like a very impressive, parlor trick.
Birdseye's guests were amazed. In 1920, an electric refrigerator still cost around $600, about half the average annual salary in the U.S. Most people still stored their food in real ice boxes, cooled by a real chunk of ice.
It was, in fact, a testament to one's wealth and affluence if you did own, prior to World War II, one of these electric refrigerators or ice boxes that did not need to have a block of ice put in there.
But these ice boxes couldn't get cold enough. They couldn't freeze foods. Birdseye's idea was not catching on. Undeterred, he borrowed against his life insurance policy and opened the General Foods freezing plant in the fishing port of Gloucester, Massachusetts. He began quick freezing slices of fish and meat between metal plates cooled with salt water.
And fish, which is inedible unless it's kept very, very fresh. For most Americans who do not live on the East Coast or the West Coast or Florida, do not have access to fresh fish or very good fish. So freezing fish made eminent sense.
Birdseye also froze the occasional goose, and that was a lucky thing. By chance, Marjorie Merriweather Post sampled a goose frozen by Birdseye. She was the daughter and heir of the cereal tycoon C.W. Post. She was buying up food processing companies, and she figured that Birdseye's outfit was poised to change America. She was right. In Birdseye's day, cooking was so time-consuming that most married women spent the equivalent of a full work week just preparing food. Marjorie Post saw such a big future in frozen food that she bought Birdseye out, took over his freezing operations, and changed her company's name to General Foods. But even a big-time operation had problems selling the so-called frosted foods. Between 1920 and 1930, American refrigerator sales had gone from about 5,000 a year to 1 million, but they still didn't have self-contained freezers. Almost half of America still didn't even have electricity. And it wasn't only customers who needed freezers.
That was one big problem of trying to sell it, because the grocers didn't want to have to invest in all this expensive equipment. And the people who were used to just any frozen food that they had tried before was not very good quality, so they weren't too thrilled with it either.
So General Foods built freezers and rented them to the shopkeepers to display Birdseye foods. And still, the public held back. Until the Second World War. The war spurred a giant surge in research into nutrition, preservation, and mass production of food. Canned foods were rationed for their metal or sent to feed the troops. Frozen foods wrapped in cardboard and wax paper were more freely available.
A lot of women ended up working, so they didn't have as much time, so they needed the convenience. They didn't have the time to cut up the green beans by themselves and all that.
The military also built frozen food lockers and bought millions of pounds of frozen vegetables for its troops.
After World War II, when America was booming, everybody had a real refrigerator with a freezer in it, which is a very, very brand new thing. So you could have these fresh, frozen beans and all kinds of wonderful vegetables, unthaw them, just pop them in some boiling water, and they had a fresher taste and a brighter color, and Americans really loved that aspect of it, too.
In 1945, prices were dropping and salaries rising. A home refrigerator cost $90, and a kitchen without one was the exception. The average time cooking and cleaning up dropped from 7 hours a day in 1900 to under 3 in 1950. In 1900, one married woman in 20 was in the workforce. In 1950, that number surged to 1 in 4. Frozen foods were no longer luxuries or modern marvels. They were indispensable.
Most of the great inventions in food service are for preservation. And even if you go back thousands of years, when man first smoked meats and put things in brines and put things in pickling and salted them, this was a way of preserving food that was not going to be around next week or next month.
Bird's eye's vision brought about the first major breakthrough in preservation since the invention of the can. Supermarket freezer sections, the aisle that Bird's eye built, swelled. Mrs. Paul's deviled crabs and frozen French fries appeared in 1946. In 1947, Americans bought 7 million cans of frozen orange juice, and that number doubled by 1948. In 1953, the now legendary TV dinner made its first appearance. And in 1955, on its 200th anniversary, the Gorton Fish Company introduced fish sticks. Even Bird's Eye hadn't figured out how to make children eat fish. Gorton's did.
Fish in its native form is scary. There's all different kinds. You got the scales, you got the, if you've ever been to a fancy restaurant, you know, you got that, the eyes looking up at you.
What those fish sticks did was to make eminent sense for children because they were breaded and they were fried and they were very, very tasty, and they were types of things which kids could pick up with their fingers.
In the 1980s, frozen food fell out of fashion, condemned as flavorless and unappealing, after giant leaps in the shipping business introduced a huge new range of fresh foods to American markets.
If you're living in a country where diffusion of foods is very difficult and costly if they're fresh, where you have to drive a lettuce from California to Maine in order to have it, then you'll go for a frozen spinach. But once you start sending food by cheap jumbo jets from one place to another, then the prices go down and you buy the real stuff.
But the combination of freezer and microwave put frozen food on the table once again. Americans still don't have any extra time to waste on cooking. Food makers filled the freezer with an array of pre-cooked gourmet meals, organic burritos and Asian delicacies, and every one of them a descendant of Clarence Birdseye's frozen caribou. By the end of his life, Birdseye held 300 patents, including an electric fishing reel and an industrial harpoon. But the most important fish he ever caught was back in Labrador in 1916, when he was struck by a simple idea that changed life in America. Coming up, we'll learn why you might get your mouth washed out with soap if you say chimichanga, when More American Eats returns here on the History Channel.
The 260 horsepower Acura CL Type S.
Introducing the best America Online ever. New version 7.0. It's better, faster, and easier.
It's like a click and you're connected.
7.0 is fast.
It's got all the new features. It's just so easy.
All new AOL version 7.0.
Welcome.
It's everything you love about America Online. You've got mail. Now with cool new features and places to go.
I'm falling in love with the new features. 7.0 is the best. Don't be a chicken, it's easy.
America Online, new version 7.0. So easy to use, no wonder it's #1. Call 1-800-4ONLINE.
A beautiful melody can rekindle memories you cherish for a lifetime. Introducing Instrumental Legends, 36 timeless classics performed by the greatest orchestras of all time. Here is a treasury of the most unforgettable songs. So many of your sentimental favorites. Every song an original hit recording. This great collection features the last of the big-name orchestras and their legendary leaders. You'll love every song in this magnificent collection. This collection is not sold in stores, so order now. Instrumental Legends, 36 original classics on 2 cassettes or 2 compact discs. Here's how to order.
Have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-451-7555. That's 1-800-451-7555. Or send $19.98 for 2 cassettes or $26.98 for 2 CDs plus $4.95 shipping to Instrumental Legends, P.O. Box 6330, Vernon Hills, Illinois, 60061.
Tuesday on the History Channel.
It's the most perfect building in ancient Egypt.
The only thing built stronger was the willpower of the men who built them.
They were not only competitive with each other, they were also competitive with art itself.
Relive the struggle.
I would rate that as one of the greatest engineering feats on Earth.
And uncover the secrets of the structures built to last on Modern Marvels. Begins Tuesday night at 10 on the History Channel.
Hello, I'm Baltimore County Executive Dutch Riebensberger. In these unusual times, Baltimore County is working to protect you and your family. Look for current information and the complete Baltimore County Emergency Operations Plan in your local library and on the county website, www.co.ba.md.us.
Disney's All-Toon Channel with round-the-clock tunes starring all the best Disney characters. Toon Disney, built from the best tunes.
We now return to More American Eats here on the History Channel. It's exotic and romantic with a taste of sun-drenched lands past the southern horizon. Giant platters laced with salsa, dripping with melted cheese, washed down with icy cerveza. We call it Mexican food. So it may surprise you that a platter full of the most famous items on the menu aren't exactly Mexican.
We down here call it Tex-Mex. Tex-Mex food is Mexican food that's been doctored up by the Texans.
Fajitas and margaritas and chips and salsa, chili con queso. Most of the dishes that are really what we think of as Mexican food in the United States were all invented along the border or in Texas.
In the 1800s, the United States gobbled up a lot of territory that once belonged to Mexico. Texas in 1845, California, Arizona, and New Mexico in 1848. A new flag was flying over these lands, but the menu was pretty much the same. Tacos, fried foods, and simple sauces. Cheap ranch food borrowed from the plains of west central Mexico.
Yes, but I smell frijoles.
There has been a continuous exchange between the major cities and the major Mexican communities of Texas with their homeland that's pretty much unaffected by the borders.
Northern Mexicans who crossed the border found work cooking for cattle ranch cowboys. But now they were cooking with new flavors brought to the border states by the North American railroads.
American cheese, the lard that a lot of the things were fried in, these came from the American side of the border. So American tastes and American influences started to change the way Mexican food was prepared.
In the growing Texas cities, Mexican Americans made a living selling street food to the gringos.
Some of the most famous street vendors were the chili queens of San Antonio, who were flirtatious young Mexican girls who flirted with the cowboys and the soldiers and brought them to their mama's food stands, which were tables set up in Military Square. The other famous vendors were tamale vendors who pushed carts through the streets. They all had distinctive songs. You could tell your tamale vendor was coming by hearing this song.
But by 1910, the sanitary reforms of the so-called progressive era had chased the food vendors from the sidewalks.
The first inspections for restaurants and rules for food handling came into being, and those rules pretty much put the street vendors out of business. Mexican restaurants replaced the street vendors.
The new restaurants all claimed to serve authentic Mexican food.
There was no attempt at authenticity. That wasn't the point. The point was to please the gringo palate. This chili gravy is like no sauce you'll ever see in a Mexican restaurant anywhere else. It's like brown gravy with a little bit of comino and chili powder in it. So it tastes like the brown gravy you get on a Salisbury steak, you know, in a cafeteria with a little bit of spice in it. It was geared for American tastes.
Like any ethnic cuisine, Mexican food was also altered by the creative genius of a handful of entrepreneurs, like Monica Flynn. Flynn was a true Tex-Mex pioneer, born to a Mexican mother and a French father in Tucson, Arizona in 1882. She opened her restaurant, El Charro, in 1922, and that is where she claimed to invent the chimichanga. The story goes that one day, Flynn was bustling around a busy kitchen full of family, rushing to make a customer a burrito. She stumbled and knocked the burrito into a deep fryer.
She went to say a swear word, which even now and in those times, grandmas and aunts just didn't swear in front of children, and quickly changed her swear word into, ay, chimichanga, instead of what she was going to say.
When Monica fished the burrito out of the fryer, she got a pleasant surprise. The outside had been fried a delicate, flaky golden brown.
What's fun about this dish? This is crispy, this is nice, moist flavor. Take these together, and you can blend this with a little bit of the sauce, with a little bit of the sour cream, with a little bit of the guacamole, frijolitos de olla. Mmm, delicioso.
In the early 1950s, the chimichanga became the signature dish of El Charro.
Welcome to El Charro. I see you're having a chimichanga combination platter.
And has remained that way ever since.
Which flavor did you get? People come here, I want one of those thinamajigs. Oh, okay. I mean, I know what they're talking about. We do. And when we present it to them, that's what I came for. And they're happy and they love it.
As the chimichanga became the entree that ate Tucson, Mexican food was gearing up to go national. Once again, it was a combination of vision, appetite, and ambition that did it, with a little help from the hamburger. The hamburger? In 1948, the McDonald brothers launched their landmark restaurant concept in San Bernardino, California. Local resident Glenn Bell was such a big fan that he opened his own burger joint down the road. Within a few years, Bell taught himself how to make crisp, pre-shaped taco shells using his French fryer. Soon, he was out of the burger business for good. In 1954, he opened Taco Tia, the precursor to Taco Bell. Mexican food was making its way into the heartland, so effectively in some cases that its origins were forgotten.
People in Cincinnati had 6 ways of talking about chili, none of which mentioned anything that was in it, like a 2-way and a 3-way, and thought chili was a Cincinnati dish made by Greeks, and didn't quite understand that people in the Southwest ate chili, or let alone people in Mexico.
The fajita, too, was a border specialty, a grilled snack popular with Texas ranch hands who were often paid in beef as well as cash. Turned from local secret into vendor snacks in the 1960s, and then picked up by restaurants everywhere. But the greatest success story of all Mexican foods may be the humble nacho. Every famous food has its myth of origin. For the nacho, it's been claimed that the story actually goes back to a man named, yes, Nacho. Actually, the nickname for his given name of Ignacio.
My grandfather is Ignacio, my father Ignacio, I'm Ignacio, my son Ignacio, and we have a nephew by the name of Ignacio. So there's nachos, several nachos.
In the 1940s, Nacho Anaya Sr. was manager of a popular restaurant in Piedras Negras, Mexico, just across the border from the U.S. Army base in Eagle Pass. One afternoon in 1943, a group of Army officers' wives stopped in at Nacho's place. The kitchen was closed, so Nacho whipped up a simple snack. Melted cheddar cheese and onions on some tortilla chips and brought them to the table. The ladies liked them so much, they asked Anaya for seconds.
Nacho, what do you call this? I don't know. He said, I'll be right back. The others are burning, so let me bring him back another plate. So he did. By the time he came back to the table with another dozen or 15 nachos on the plate, she had the name for them, Nachos Specials.
But in the story of American Eats, the most important question is often not who made it first, but who made money off of it. In 1976, concession sales were slow at Arlington Stadium, home of the Texas Rangers. Someone suggested adding nachos to the menu, but concession supplier Frank Liberto was skeptical.
The way Ignacio Anaya made them was so labor-intensive and so time-intensive that you wait a long period of time to get an order, and because of the cost, it just was being prohibitive.
But Liberto was intrigued, so he cooked up a light cheese topping that was semi-liquid even at room temperature, and started serving the chip and cheese combo in 1977. At first, his customers were puzzled.
They'd come by and say, what do you got there? Why are you heating the mustard? What kind of pickles are those? And then I'd make them an order. And gosh, what do you call this? Nachos?
Liberto didn't know what to call them. Then one night, the Monday Night Football crew came to town.
Howard Cosell and Dandy Dan Meredith were the hosts, and at one game, Howard Cosell says, did you go back to the press reception area and taste that stuff they got out there tonight? And Meredith said, yeah. And what do you call it? Isn't it Nachos or something? And they started saying, oh, it's nachos, not Nachos. So then the next thing you knew, for about, I'd say 6 weeks to 2 months on Monday Night Football, they'd say, did you see that run? Man, that was nachos all the way. And they were just mixing this newfound word into all of their conversations, and I just said, hey, we're going to go with it, whatever it means.
Within 2 years, 1 in every 3 ballpark customers at Arlington were buying nachos, while only 1 in 14 bought popcorn, the reliable old standby. Today, ballpark nachos are as popular as restaurant nachos. Purists might complain that the ballpark version is counterfeit cuisine, but they can't argue with the success.
I've made peace with nachos. I've made peace with fajitas. My husband may not have, but I have. And I am the cook, so it's okay.
Coming up, they didn't think much of sex, but they sure liked breakfast. How a handful of very odd nutritionists turned eating into an industry when More American Eats returns here on the History Channel.
This holiday, there's only one place to unwrap the magic. JCPenney. This magic moment. This shimmering 1-carat diamond bracelet, now just $1.99. It's all inside JCPenney.
Do you like legs? Good, because right now at Red Lobster, a pound of hot, steaming snow crab legs is just $10.99. So walk, run, or crawl to Red Lobster and go overboard.
Sunday is Guts and Glory night. It's anchors away as the color of war brings you combat at sea. Then fly missions over Germany on battle stations inside the RAF's legendary Lancaster bomber. Followed by the inside story of power in fascist Italy as History Undercover profiles Mussolini's shadowy henchmen. Guts and Glory Sunday presents The Color of War, Battle Stations, History Undercover. Tomorrow night at 8 on the History Channel.
That Snowbot is a great way to tell customers Staples has technology gifts.
Greetings, handhelds make terrific gifts. So do digital cameras.
Nice price.
Excuse me, could you tell me about the scanner fax copier?
No.
But I want to get it for my brother.
Get him a cell phone.
No, he really wants one of these.
He can't have her. I love her.
What?
No. Weeping.
It's okay. You found just someone else.
Oh.
Get more for less at Staples.
Beauty, adventure, drama. All these and more can be yours in the wonderful world of art. And with this free art test from Art Instruction Schools, you can find out if you have the interest and desire needed to become a serious art student. To get your free art test without cost or obligation, call this toll-free number. Don't delay. Call this toll-free number now. Call 1-800-354-3400.
Attention inventors! Need a patent? Then you need Inventec, the launchpad for new ideas. Inventec understands the needs of inventors like you. And only Inventec offers a free new product market analysis and a free bonus video. It's the first step towards a patent and marketing success. Call 1-800-758-7722. With your market analysis, learn the secrets the pros use to take it to the next level. Be first to the marketplace while your idea is still hot. With our worldwide experience, Inventec can turn your idea into reality. Learn if your idea has the right stuff for marketing success. It's free. Don't let this opportunity slip away. Call now and receive your free analysis, free marketing info, and a free video. Take that all-important first step towards turning your dream into reality. Call 1-800-758-7722 to receive your free package loaded with free info. That's 1-800-758-7722. Call now.
We now return to More American Eats here on the History Channel. At the dawn of the 20th century, most Americans started the day with a giant breakfast. Eggs, potatoes, fish and biscuits, bacon and sausage, a plate of oysters, and a pork chop or two. An English breakfast overflowing with American abundance. Within 10 years, that groaning breakfast table would be replaced with this. This bowl of cornflakes utterly changed the American marketplace. And all because Americans just wanted to eat right. Believe it or not, worrying about nutrition is a luxury. And Americans, graced with the world's lowest food prices and the widest choice of edibles, have enjoyed the luxury of listening to some very strange advice about eating. The first great American nutrition guru was Sylvester Graham, who told his disciples in the 1830s that gluttony was worse than hunger, and that Americans should give up meat and sex and feather beds.
I'm not sure just what allows some quacks to become respected and others to just die a slow death or a fast death. And so long as you do what your mother used to say, just eat a little bit of everything and you'll be fine, seems to be still an excellent recipe.
But that's not what Dr. John Harvey Kellogg thought. In the 1890s, Dr. Kellogg was the eccentric impresario of a renowned health sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. Everyone who was anyone in the 1890s went to see Dr. Kellogg. His A-list clientele included Eleanor Roosevelt, Henry Ford, Harvey Firestone, and William Howard Taft. In Battle Creek, they and thousands of others submitted to baths, to massages, electroshock therapy, laughing exercises, and the doctor's famous yogurt enemas.
Doctor promoted yogurt as a way to get your intestinal tract in good shape. They had a beefsteak that was kept in yogurt for some 17 years and was still kept in good shape. Health was everything to him. It didn't matter what he had to do to promote health, he would do it.
From what I've read, I believe that J.H. Kellogg was certifiably insane. But, I mean, he believed what he was pitching. And I think the same with his brother.
W.K. Kellogg was John Harvey's little brother. He was in charge of the food production at the sanitarium, providing Kellogg disciples with what was likely the sanitarium's most important achievement, a good diet. The Kellogg's promoted a low-calorie, low-protein diet loaded with grains, or as they were known then, cereals.
Cereal has always been tied to general good health, going back to ancient times when this is literally all that human beings lived on. In America, we had these amber waves of grain throughout the Midwest. What are you going to do with it all?
In 1894, the Kellogg brothers began experimenting with a ready-to-eat breakfast food made of cereals. They rolled dough into thin sheets and baked it. It took a while to get it right.
You have to cook the grains, you have to get the moisture clear into the middle of the grains, and then to be partially dried again and get the right content. And then when you put them through the rollers, you have these nice flakes that come out.
The cereal flake was almost ready, but the brothers were at war. W.K. was a businessman. He wanted to add sugar to make them taste better. He also wanted to advertise. Brother John thought that both advertising and added sugar were unethical. And as the brothers bickered, another man beat them to the cash register. His name was C.W. Post, and he was a former patient at the sanitarium. Rumor has it that while he was staying there, he stole a few recipes from the kitchen. Soon after, he came out with a roasted grain coffee substitute called Postum, which looked and tasted a lot like a drink the Kellogg's had been serving for years. Next, Post came out with a breakfast flake. He called it Elijah's Manna, a reference to heaven-sent food eaten by the biblical prophet. Religious leaders objected, so Post changed the name to Post Toasties. Unlike John Harvey Kellogg, Post had no qualms about advertising, and he quickly became Battle Creek's first cereal millionaire. Americans had changed their fashions, the slimmer Gibson Girl waistline was coming into style. Post was happy to promise them that his flakes were the key to good looks and good health.
The marketing that he did was so unique for the time, so different, that it caught people's attention.
Post's success was too much for the ambitious W.K. Kellogg to take. In 1906, he started mass-producing Kellogg's Corn Flakes, sweetened with a touch of malt sugar. Dr. John Harvey, irritated by his brother's commercial success, sued W.K. to stop him from using the Kellogg name, and lost, and the brothers were estranged for life. And their invention was hitting the big time. Americans, health-conscious as ever, had discovered vitamins, and the easiest way to get vitamins was in processed foods, like cereal.
The best way, naturally, is to supply vitamins to the food.
In Battle Creek, the cereal business boomed.
That was the place to go. I mean, it's just kind of a Me Too kind of thing, that basically anyone would buy anything from Battle Creek and figure it would be a quality product or that it would be healthy.
Extravagant promises were commonplace. If they couldn't get you to buy with promises, they brought presents for your kids. In 1911, Kellogg offered the very first premium inside a box of cornflakes, the Jungle Picture Book. Americans bought the promises, and they bought the cereal. By 1920, food processing was the biggest business in America, bigger than cars and bigger than steel, and cereal led the way.
There used to be Tom Mix on the radio. He'd say, shredded Ralston for your breakfast, bite-sized and ready to eat. Take a tip from Tom, go and tell your mom shredded Ralston can't be beaten. I can remember that, and that's got to be 50 years or more ago.
It was, in fact, the invention of what advertisers call branding. Getting customers to connect a product with quality or reassurance so they'll keep buying. In 1926, America's first radio jingle ever was written and broadcast for Wheaties. 7 years later, Wheaties informed the public it was now the breakfast of champions and invented the sports endorsement. The first pre-sweetened cereal, called Ranger Joe, came out in 1939.
People were tiring of eating this stuff that tasted little better than the box itself, and because Americans had such access to milk, to add sugar to it, the sugared cereals come after World War II.
They realized that one big market that they hadn't really tried to mine was kids, and that's when they started with the pre-sweetened cereals and, you know, the lovable cartoon mascots that you see today.
Even the venerable cornflake got re-sweetened, and by 1951 got a mascot of its own, Tony the Tiger. Today there are more than 400 different cereals to be found on the grocery shelves, and almost all of them are made by 4 of the companies that joined the cereal boom 100 years ago: Kellogg's, Post, Quaker, and General Mills. Their factories produce about 50 million pounds of cereal a year each, and are all from pretty much the same stuff as ever.
Corn, wheat, oat, and rice. Captain Crunch is corn-based, as is Count Chocula up there, and the Pebbles are rice-based. And then you have some cereals that are kind of out in left field, like the Golden Grahams, which is graham-based.
Breakfast long ago left nutrition in the dust. Every year, the cereal industry spends more on advertising than the U.S. government spends on nutrition education.
You have all these healthy cereals coming out, like All Bran and Product 19, Special K, Smart Start, all these cereals that are kind of targeted at young urban professionals that are trying to, you know, keep healthy by eating cereal, when it's, you know, it's not really that much healthier than you know, the sugary cereals. It's just there's no sugar in it.
Sugarless Dr. John Harvey Kellogg died in 1943 at the age of 91. Pretty good for a grass eater, he said. His pro-sugar brother W.K. also died at the age of 91, proving either that every kind of cereal really is health food, or maybe that the ingredients aren't really that important.
cereal like soda is really, a lot of it is, you know, kind of what they put in our heads rather than what they're putting in our stomachs.
Coming up, the frustrated cook who sliced up a $4 billion business. And just how long can that Twinkie stay on your shelf, really? When More American Eats returns here on the History Channel.
Somewhere out there, your team is taking the court, and you can be there coast to coast. Now, Sports in Demand brings your team home. With NBA League Pass on digital cable, you can choose from up to 40 out-of-market games a week. Call now to lock in your $20 early bird discount. You can either fly to a different city every night or pocket the airfare and get NBA League Pass. The clock is ticking on your $20. Call now.
Great seafood can't be found at a grocery store, so treat yourself to the fine selection at Hale's Seafood. Hale's has been a family tradition since 1953, offering the freshest, highest quality seafood. Hale's wide selection of seafood includes fresh fish, shrimp, oysters, scallops, lobsters, crab meat, and soft crabs. We also offer prepared foods like crab cakes, imperials, and breaded and stuffed shrimp. Our platters, salads, and soups are fresh and homemade, and our large, heavy crabs are our specialty year-round. Hale's Seafood, 1801 Taylor Avenue, or call 410-665-4000.
On the History Channel. Well, the world is familiar with Hitler. Much less is known about his partner and ally to the south. Il Duce, trapped by his alliances, doomed by his own men. Mussolini's henchman on History Undercover with Arthur Kent. Tomorrow night at 10 on the History Channel. Tuesday on the History Channel, Dan or Dory.
They are indeed the Michael Jordans of their time.
The true story.
Gladiatorial combat was some form of human sacrifice.
It's a symbol of a society that was out of control.
They're the scum of society.
The true story of gladiators on History's Mysteries. Tuesday night at 11, only on the History Channel.
We now return to More American Eats here on the History Channel. Eating habits have changed radically throughout history, but there is one kind of eating in which mankind has indulged non-stop since the beginning of recorded history. Here's a hint. It happens in between meals. Snacking has a long and noble history. Rich Romans served flamingo tongues and peacock brains to their guests.
I don't think there's anything better in this world than eating well.
But no society, no matter how civilized, has matched the American output of snacks, the ultimate food in an individualistic age.
Snack food is endless. It comes from the same pipeline, and you don't deprive somebody of it if you have yet one more potato chip.
The humble pretzel made its debut in the 7th century. Baked to resemble two arms crossed in monastic prayer. This treat was given to children who learned their Bible verses. It was named pretiola, Latin for little rewards. Even popcorn has an ancient heritage. American Indians had been popping it long before they shared that skill with the Pilgrims. But the salty snack that can trace its lineage straight to this American life is the potato chip, red, white, or blue. Born at the Moon Lake Lodge in Saratoga Springs, New York in 1853.
A customer kept asking the chef, George Crumb, to make thinner and thinner potatoes. And he got very frustrated and sliced them so thin you could actually see through them. He threw them into a deep fryer and took them out. He says, "Are these thin enough for you?"
Evidently, Crumb's invention was just right.
There's a story that maybe, just maybe, the man who asked for them to be cut that thin was Cornelius Vanderbilt, the tycoon, who spread their glory through society.
But it takes more than inspiration to change the American menu. It takes innovation. The so-called Saratoga chips became popular in restaurants outside of Saratoga Springs and then in dry goods stores. Merchants sold them out of barrels like flour and crackers. But once again, technology stepped in. In the 1920s, the invention of the continuous potato chip fryer took the chip out of the kitchen kettle. Then on the day after Thanksgiving 1926, Californian Laura Scudder put them in bags for the first time, folding wax paper into pockets, filling them with chips, and then ironing them shut. Scudder, who sold her first bags of chips out of the back of her car, ran her own company until she died in 1959. The average potato chip is only 1/20th of an inch thick, but it's a $4.5 billion potato chip industry that has put this particular American flavor in every corner of the world.
I remember being once in Brazil, in Manaus, right in the heart of the jungle, and I thought I wanted to see the food market, and that was going to be great, this jungle food market. And I went there, and what was the first thing that I saw? A wall of Pringles.
But salt is only part of the snacking picture. Ask any right-thinking tongue. True, bitter and sour have their own special locations on your taster, but right alongside the taste buds for salt are the taste buds for sweet. Our hunger for sweets is just as pressing, and what a price humanity has paid for it.
Basically, sugar caused slavery. It was so attractive that we actually began to ruin people's lives in order to drag them from one part of the world to where they could actually grow sugar, which is in a very narrow band, actually, of the planet.
From the 16th century on, drinks like coffee and chocolate were the height of fashion in Europe, but they were very bitter. Sugar to sweeten them came from New World colonies like Jamaica, Brazil, and Cuba, where Indians and then Africans were enslaved to raise, harvest, and press the sugarcane. Only with a steady harvest of sugar did tea become the essential drink of the British Empire.
The expansion of sugar usage in England was astonishing. It was just outrageous how quickly sugar became not just available, but became almost mandatory.
Sugar even helped fuel the American Revolution. When the British taxed the sales of molasses in the notorious Sugar Act of 1764, it fanned the flames of American indignation every bit as much as the more famous tax on tea. I know not why we should blush to confess that molasses was an essential ingredient in American independence, John Adams remembered. Many great events have proceeded from much smaller causes. Quite a heritage for the mid-afternoon snack. Like the Revolutionary War, the world's first and most popular snack cake was born out of indignation. In 1930, a bakery manager named James Dewar was fed up with seeing his shortcake pans gather dust. At the time, shortcake was only in demand during the summer strawberry season. Bananas, on the other hand, grew in Latin America and were shipped into the U.S. all year round. So Dewar tried something new, a shortcake with a banana cream filling. Inspired by a billboard for a shoe brand called Twinkle Toe, he called his invention Twinkle Fingers for a time before settling finally on Twinkies. But Dewar couldn't even count on bananas. Rationing during the Second World War put an end to the fruit supply altogether, so the maker settled on a sweet vanilla cream, a flavor popular enough that they never switched back.
In France, every little village can afford to have a pastry shop and a little bakery. In the United States, because of our vastness, to have something that was consistent, to have something that you could always get every time you stopped at a Howard Johnson's, every time you stopped at a grocery store, there they were.
Sameness has succeeded. Today, 3 American cities have renamed streets for the Twinkie. The Twinkie's present-day caretakers, Interstate Bakeries, make 500 million Twinkies a year, using 160 million eggs in the process. The cream, known to insiders as whip, is crammed into 52,000 cakes an hour. The little extra dab of whip that pokes out the bottom is called the smile. Consistency is so important to customers that Interstate actually changes the formula over the course of the year to compensate for changes in temperature and humidity in the weather. James Dewar died in 1985. His Twinkie is immortal, but not literally. Even though Twinkies are among the most popular items to put into time capsules, Twinkies do not have an infinite shelf life. They have to sell within 2 weeks, or out they go. You may love them, but do you know what's in them? America's favorite mysterious originals. When More American Eats returns, here on the History Channel.
A gift from Kay means you can be assured of two things. First, the Kay diamonds are hand-selected for exceptional beauty. And second, that you'll absolutely love it. This holiday, Kay's 3-stone diamond rings start from only $599. Every kiss begins with
After the new Chevy Trailblazer, everything else just seems kind of weak. The all-new 270 horsepower Chevy Trailblazer, like a rock.
I want to tell you all a story about a Harper Valley widowed wife.
Do you remember when country songs told a story?
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican
All those great tales.
I was born in Saginaw, Michigan. I grew up.
Time Life Music proudly presents the Great Story Songs Collection.
In 1814, we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little
From the Battle of New Orleans to a battle of two fiddle players.
The devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind because he was way behind. He was with
30 hits, including the all-time Truckers Classic.
It was a dark of the moon on the 6th of June in a Kenworth pulling logs.
Get great story songs on 2 CDs or 2 cassettes.
North to Alaska, go north, the rest is home.
Johnny Horton, Bobby Bear, Marty Robbins, Johnny Cash.
Well, my daddy left home when I was 3, and he didn't leave much to Ma.
From a boy named Sue to a man named John.
He stood 6'6" and weighed 245, kind of broad at the shoulder and narrow at the hip. And everybody knew you didn't give no lip to Big John.
How old was I when I first seen old Rivers? I can't
but
remember.
This special collection is not in stores.
Fighting soldiers from the sky.
So please call now.
Fearless men who jump and die.
To order Great Story Songs, call 1-800-916-9797 or send $24.99 for 2 CDs or 2 cassettes plus $4.99 shipping and handling to Great Story Songs, Department 3, Richmond, Virginia, 23280. Call 1-800-916-9797 or order online at timelife.com.
Boomer, you still think the 85 Bears defense is better than the Ravens?
Yep.
NFL Countdown, Sundays, 11 a.m. Eastern on ESPN.
If you lived before our time, who would you be? Would you fight your brother or for the rights of another? Who would you be? Would you find new dreams or create new wonders? What if you could choose from 1,000 yesterdays, 1,000 lives? When the past was today, and the new took your breath away. Who would you be? What would would you feel? How would you live? Who would you love? Living every generation before us, remembering generations to come. The History Channel, where the past comes alive.
We're the kids who visit the National Archives and get goosebumps from seeing history up close.
Be sure to take your family to Washington to see these historic treasures before they go off public viewing for 2 years for re-encasement.
We now return to more American Eats here on the History Channel. They're the sphinxes of the American pantry, the enigmas of eats.
There is no other food in the world that I know of where the mundane and the mysterious combine so harmoniously as in Spain.
That's delicious.
What magic has turned these curious substances into solid gold American foods? What parts go into Spam? And what exactly is Jell-O? Both of these American originals were created by risk-taking gamblers and basement experimenters, and they're still around today because they share the same beloved American flavor, nostalgia. Ever wonder about that jiggly see-through stuff that congeals on the leftovers? That's collagen, protein from the bones and joints.
Actually, if anybody has ever cooked a chicken and let the broth set in the refrigerator overnight, you know that something gelled.
For centuries, gelatin had been a luxury food. Like so many other delicacies, it was available mostly to the well-to-do, who were eating enough meat to have gelatin left over to pour into the intricate, delicate molds.
The more gelatin molds you had, it meant you were rich because you had lots of cooks who could make up lots of gelatin dishes for you.
In 1845, an inventor named Peter Cooper applied for the first American gelatin patent. Cooper had a pretty good resume. He had laid the first transatlantic telegraph cable, and he owned the famous Tom Thumb Railway. He also operated a glue factory, and one of its byproducts was gelatin.
But his flavorings and colorings were not what we would associate with what we know as Jell-O today. There were peach pits in it, there were allspice and cloves and a lot of things that we don't associate with a gelatin, but was a tradition from what was passed on to him.
It wasn't until 1897 that gelatin was molded into the shape we know best. A Leroy, New York carpenter named Pearl B. Waite, working in his basement, started cooking gelatin down into a powder. All he did was add boiling water, let it stand, and the stuff would gel all over again, creating an instant food from what had once been the domain of the gentry. Waite added sugar and fruit flavors to make the gelatin a little more tasty. The catchy name, on the other hand, was the brainchild of Mrs. Waite.
My grandma said, oh, it gels. They looked at this concoction in the basement, and they flipped it over, and Jell-O. It came from that. So we say Grandpa invented it, but Grandma named it. So we don't know who's the more important person in our life. Because I think the Jell-O name means as much as the product.
And so the celebrated name and product emerged fully realized from the Waite's basement. But there was still one intangible ingredient missing, the commercial appeal. Pearl B. Waite was a gifted inventor, but no salesman, and he was unable to make Jell-O a success. Soon enough, he was ready to unload his wobbly white elephant.
There was a guy in town who was already a successful businessman, already had salesmen out on the road selling his products, so Orator Woodward bought it in 1899 for $450.
Woodward's operators knew exactly how to sell the stuff.
They handed out the free recipe books. They'd come to a town, they'd blitz every home with sliding a free recipe book for Jell-O under the door, and then they would go to the storekeepers in town and say, we just handed out 500 free recipe books for this new product named Jell-O, and people are going to be coming in and asking for it, so we would be glad to stock your shelves with this new product.
In 1902, Woodward rolled out the first national ad campaign. 2 years later, his posters began to feature the famous Jell-O Girl, based on a real-life pixie named Elizabeth King. Trading on the old-time snob appeal of gelatin desserts, Jell-O became a hit, especially when at a dime a box, any family could afford Jell-O. Orator Woodward died in 1906, but the business stayed in his family. Within a year of his death, the powder that had cost him $450 was grossing $1 million a year. By the 1930s, snob appeal was out because hard times were inescapable. Jell-O took on a new personality, sold as a cheap, simple, anytime treat, something you could whip up even under a tent at a campground. Jell-O was endlessly portable in its powdered form, and Jell-O chefs were endlessly inventive in how to make it set properly. Even flyboys on the front lines of World War II.
The pilots would take it up to a higher elevation where it was cool. They'd stay in the air until the Jell-O would set. Of course, they also cooled their beer that way too, but they always, this was a neat story about how they set their Jell-O.
The war had a tremendous impact on the world's palate, mostly a negative one, because when the fighting nations were done feeding their armies, there wasn't much left for the civilians. And that's how a distinctive blue and yellow can made its extraordinary pilgrimage from rural Minnesota to, well, to everywhere.
Everybody wonders what the heck it is. What is Spam? And of course we know it's pork shoulder, and everybody says to me, and eyelashes and tails and, you know, hooves and ears and what else?
A few years before the war at the Hormel plant in Austin, Minnesota, 40-year-old Jay Hormel was frustrated. After packing the company's best-selling hams, tons of pork shoulder was left over.
Pork shoulder is a really bony meat, and if you just sell it, it sells for pennies a pound. And so they wanted to figure out a way to make it worth their while to cut the pork shoulder off the bone.
Hormel assigned the task to the company chef, a real-life French chef named Jean Vernet. Vernet's solution was to grind up the pork shoulder, season it, and cook it right in the can. Hormel served the marbled pink results at a black-tie New Year's Eve party. The overall taste was approved. But what to call it? A drinking game ensued, with Jay Hormel offering guests rewards in exchange for a catchy name. It said that one guest, Kenneth Daigneault, the brother of a Hormel executive, made an acronym of shoulder of pork and ham into a single catchy syllable.
Spam, 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 spam. Hormel's new miracle meat in a can. Saves time, tastes fine. To eat something grand, as for Spam.
At the time when Spam came out, for the most part, meat products were sold in butcher shops, not in grocery stores. They were not branded. They were not canned. They were either cured or sold fresh.
But in America, convenience is king. Launched in 1937, Spam sold 40 million pounds in just 3 years, snapped up for its convenience, its low cost, and nutritional value. And thanks to promotion by beloved radio celebrities like George Burns and Gracie Allen. But Spam would soon have a much more serious role to play. The German Blitz and the U-boats prowling the Atlantic brought on food shortages in England. As part of the Lend-Lease agreement, America started packing off shiploads of Spam along with tanks and ammunition.
Any kind of a meat dish, you would get Spam in it. They wouldn't necessarily tell you that's what it was.
A slang term for England during the war was Spamland. When Americans went to war, Spam went with them. Spam would do when no fresh meat could be gotten in, which for GIs on the front lines could be every day.
Some guys were complaining that they were eating it basically 3 times a day. I mean, they called it, you know, ham that didn't pass its physical, you know, meatloaf without basic training. I mean, there were a lot of jokes. In fact, the whole culture of Spam really was born during the war because it became much more than a foodstuff.
After the spam-eating binge of World War II, you might have thought that Americans would swear off the stuff. So what happened next surprised everybody.
For as many that complained, there were just as many, if not more, who were introduced to Spam for the first time and who loved it.
There's only one Spam, and you can serve Spam so many different ways. Cold or hot, Spam hits the spot.
Like most processed foods, Spam took a public relations beating after the 50s. But Spam, stubbornly stuffed in the same old can, has claimed a touch of retro-hipness. In Seattle, it's the subject of a yearly sculpture contest run by a vegetarian named Ruby Montana.
We're so grateful that everybody came, that everybody's here for the Burn Foundation.
And judged by novelist Tom Robbins. In spite of our cultural pretensions, deep down inside, we still have a weakness for the way Spam curls up in a frying pan.
Nowadays, I eat Spam once a year on my birthday. Every year on July 22nd, I take a can and I slice it very, very thin and I fry it until it's almost black. And then I put it on Wonder Bread with lots of mayonnaise. Maybe just a faint touch of mustard.
And there's still one part of the world that's never lost its ravenous appetite for the pink stuff. Hawaii.
There's supposedly 3 common characteristics of places where Spam is very popular. One is extremes in temperature, usually a hot climate. One is native people that are really into pork dishes. And third is a former or current large U.S. military presence.
Among the undisputed champs of Spam eating, Hawaiians. Spam caught on in the 1940s as a pork substitute. Today, it's most often eaten in bowls of ramen.
Spam kebab, island style.
Or as Spam sushi. The last word in American eats, what else but Spam?
Experience the drama as never seen before. The Color of War. Tomorrow night at 8 on the History Channel.
Now, an exclusive home video offer from the History Channel. You can own the program you've just seen for only $29.95 plus shipping and handling. To order, call 1-800-708-1776 or shop online at historychannel.com.